Good evening, folks. Dale Sweet here, coming to you live from fashionable and sunny South St. Louis. And we're here tonight to talk about the St. Louis City land tax sale and the changes in the legislation for this coming year. Sorry about the technical difficulties, but I think we're on board now. I'm an attorney. I'm probably not your attorney. I might be. And tonight I don't intend to give anybody specific legal advice related to their specific situation, but rather to disseminate information and to provide general information about how to bid at a sheriff's sale in the city of St. Louis. The choice of a lawyer is always an important decision and should not be based solely on advertisements if this is an advertisement. Here's the state of Missouri, folks, and we use 3 different systems to sell property at government auctions to recapture back taxes, back real estate taxes in the state of Missouri. One system is used in Kansas City area, so that's Jackson County, and one system is used in the city of St. Louis. That's what we're here to talk about tonight. And then a completely different third system is used in most Missouri counties, including St. Louis County, Jefferson County, St. Charles County, and so on. We're not here to talk about those things tonight or on this video, but I do have a video titled Most Missouri Counties that will cover those subjects. Tonight we're talking only about the city of St. Louis, ending at Skanker or Keeneland. And we have big changes in store for the sheriff sale year 2023. Please keep in mind that there are lots of different ways to buy property. ColdwellBanker.com, Redfin, Zillow, real estate open houses, and so on. This is not a real estate marketing strategy, it's rather a tax collection strategy. And the changes in the law that are coming for the upcoming sale in May and the rest of 2023 and beyond are intended to address the rising tide of vacant and dilapidated properties in the city and in the St. Louis area. It's not a perfect system, but it's intended to, number one, prevent bidders from gaming the system by bidding things up, buying more than they can afford to do something with, not doing the right thing. And it's also intended to prevent people from being subject to the sticker shock of bidding $1 million on a property to the sheriff of the city of St. Louis and then later receiving a giant bill for additional sums, such as additional back year's taxes that were not included in the opening bid amount. So what's going to happen in going forward is that the collector of revenue should sue properties sooner if they are vacant and dilapidated. And by dilapidated, I mean building code violations. And the idea here is to get properties that are truly abandoned into the tax sale system sooner rather than later, before the freeze-thaw cycle and the back wall falls down and so on. In addition, in the future, there will be no payment plans for non-homestead properties. And what that means is that we're not trying to put out elderly people on a fixed income, but we are attempting to move properties through this tax sale system when they are vacant and abandoned and not someone's home. The most important thing, and the reason why we're doing this tonight, folks, is that it is very important to register in advance of the tax sale. So it used to be that you could just go to these auctions at the courthouse, sign up the morning of. You've heard me say show up at 8:30, that kind of stuff. That is all gone. Everyone must register at least 10 days before the auction in order to bid at the auction. The first sale this year is May 16th. It's important to go ahead and register now. Lane is going to put the link from the sheriff's website in the chat. I recommend that you just go ahead and do that while we're talking. Whether there's anything that you might choose to bid on or not, because the last thing we want is for you to be turned away at the sheriff's auction that morning of. The reason for registering in advance is to make sure that you don't have any taxes due on other properties in the city of St. Louis, or didn't bid at a sheriff's auction and then fail to pay, and you don't have any vacant property subject to vacant building fees in the city of St. Louis. Another huge change, and this is magical, And what we call it is truth in advertising. The opening bid amount, when that list comes out next week, is going to include all sums due and owing, including last year's taxes and the year before and so on. Now, naturally, it won't include the 2023 taxes because we don't even know what those are yet. However, it should include last year's taxes and earlier year's taxes, no matter when the collector sued the property or when the collector took a judgment. Another change in the law is that the law is a little bit more specific, saying that all persons and all liens are wiped out by the tax sale unless they're federal tax liens or DOJ or HUD liens, but we'll get to that later. Also new this year is that you have to confirm within 6 months. So it used to be that people would buy 6 properties in 2019. They would fix one up in the second half of 2019, one in the beginning of 2020, one at the end of 2020, and then confirm them as they went along. Now the tax sale purchaser will be required to go to court and confirm each sale within 6 months of the auction. Everybody who's sat through my presentation such as this before is well aware that the law requires the purchaser to apply for and only apply for a building division occupancy permit, an occupancy permit from the property from the City Hall building division. This year, we can also apply for a certificate of inspection instead, which is a simpler process using only one inspector, and that's for residential property, and we'll get to that. Another thing that's been going on lately is that the collector of revenue has been confirming properties for people. No title report, no checking out to make sure that all the liens are taken care of. But if you completely ignore a property after bidding at the auction and do not hire me or another attorney to go to court for you, do not go to court yourself, the collector of revenue might confirm the property for you whether you want it or not. Other big changes during the 2023 calendar year and beyond are that are intended to increase the willingness of title insurance company underwriters to write a title policy on properties that come from the City of St. Louis Sheriff's auction. And to that end, the law requires the city to do more notice prior to the auction. So for instance, just now the sheriff is going out and posting every single property with a laminated notice saying that there's an auction about to happen. The sheriff will also knock on the doors if there are any. The sheriff will also knock on the doors if anyone's at home and hand them a copy of the posting. The sheriff will take a photo of the posting and put it up on the court file to indicate that they really did indeed do this. The collector and the sheriff are required by the new law to document their notice efforts. And again, this is entirely intended for better quality of title flowing from a sheriff's auction in the city. Real estate taxes are an unusual animal. Unlike income taxes, personal property taxes, sales taxes, and so on, we never have any personal liability for our real estate taxes. And that means that the government can't sue me or you or anyone else because they didn't pay their real estate taxes, but the government can sue the earth and sell it to someone else in order to pay that tax bill. Here in Missouri, our real estate taxes are due annually, specifically on December 31st of each year. And what happens when a taxpayer doesn't pay? What do real estate taxes pay for anyway? This is a photograph of the beautiful St. Louis Art Museum, which, along with the zoo, the botanical garden, and other regional attractions that are free, are paid for by real estate taxes, in addition to public education, be it charter or be it St. Louis Public Schools, and certainly the St. Louis Public Library System, and other functions, including the St. Louis Community College District and so on. If you know someone who is about to lose her property for back taxes, they should contact the city's collector of revenue immediately to figure out what the amount is that's due and whether or not a redemption contract or a payment plan is available. No redemption, and redemption means pay the taxes and keep your property. No redemption is available after an auction in the city of St. Louis. New last year or the year before is also the Real Estate Tax Assistance Fund. You can give money to this fund, and if you know someone who qualifies by means of it being their homestead, etc., they may be able to get last-minute tax assistance for free from the Real Estate Tax Assistance Fund. Ask for information at the collector's office or go to retaf.org. Tax sales always call into question the 5th and 14th Amendments to the United States Constitution and similar sections in our state constitution for Missouri. Now, there's a lot of stuff in the 5th Amendment. For instance, double jeopardy, can't be tried twice for the same crime. Eminent domain, which means can the government take private property for a public use, such as a highway, without just compensation? No. Can a person be called to testify against himself in a criminal proceeding? No, that's plead the fifth. But also the Constitution says that no person shall be deprived of their property. That is, the government can't take away people's property without due process of law. Everything that we're about to talk about here tonight, including the sheriff knocking on that door or posting that laminated notice, is about due process of law. Buying property for back taxes is technical and specialized. It's not without risk, but it's not as risky as you've heard. It represents a break in the chain of title. The taxpayer may have money problems, may be deceased, may be other things. When somebody buys a property from a tax sale, they do not get a warranty deed. They don't have releases from lien holders and creditors and so on, which is why it's very important that the sheriff and the collector and other parts of city government do their jobs properly prior to the auction. These auctions will occur in 2023 in May, June, July, August, and October. Again, if you think you might even possibly want to bid on a property at the May 16th sale, go ahead and register right away. Each of those dates is a Tuesday. The government will try to sell whatever properties are in that particular sale on Tuesday. If nobody bids on the property, or if somebody bids on the property and fails to pay on Tuesday, the government will try to sell it again on Wednesday, and so on. Now, we're not talking about St. Louis County or other Missouri counties tonight other than the city of St. Louis. However, these counties, not Jackson County and not the city of St. Louis, but most other counties in Missouri, will attempt to sell properties at a public auction, as always, every year on the fourth Monday in August. This year, that's on August 28th, and St. Louis County will again use sealed bids and not an in-person auction. In the city of St. Louis, the sheriff sells property pursuant to the municipal land reutilization law, which has been around since the 1970s. Again, there's no right of redemption after the auction. You're actually buying property, not buying a tax lien. In general, the taxes go unpaid. The collector will sue the property. In practice, that's usually 3 years. The collector does not have to wait 3 years. That's a public policy decision. And in the future, the collector will need to act sooner on vacant, code non-compliant property. The collector sues the property and takes a foreclosure judgment in court, and then waits at least 6 months before causing the sheriff to sell property. Then the following year, in practice, it's not 6 months, it's usually 10, 11, 12, 13 months. The sheriff will sell the property to recapture the judgment amount plus from the year before. Now, the taxes can get paid until the morning of the sale, or a taxpayer, if applicable, can get on a payment plan or redemption contract, again, if that's available under the circumstances. The government will handle due process, such as ordering a title report and sending out notices to lien holders and creditors, knock on the door, post that laminated notice, and so on, prior to the auction. The successful bidder does not need a separate quiet title lawsuit necessarily, but will need to go to court to seek the judge's approval of the sale. And a separate quiet title lawsuit is probably, but not entirely, unnecessary due to the judicial foreclosure process that we use in the city as opposed to much of the rest of Missouri. So what kind of properties do we sell at the sheriff's auction in the city? Vacant lots, billboards, irregular and odd lots, residential parking spaces and parking garages. It's very, very, very important to check the legal description. If the deal sounds like it's too good to be true, it probably is. And always buyer beware. Here's an example. What is 5980R, letter R, Astra Avenue? The photograph that you're looking at on my PowerPoint presentation there is 5980 Astra without the R. The taxes are paid. It is just fine. It is an owner-occupied home. It is not for sale, or at least not for sale this year. So if you look at a newspaper ad or my email or the sheriff's website and you see 5980R Astra Avenue, that house is not what's for sale, and that is only one example. That's what 5980R Astra Avenue is. It's an alley. In this particular subdivision in the North Point neighborhood of St. Louis City, that particular alley happens to be laid out as a taxable private alley parcel belonging to one human being who once owned that house. Does not any longer. The taxes are unpaid, and the sheriff will try to sell this alley. If you want to buy this alley, subject to whatever rights you might have, then that might be for sale, but 5980 Astra, the house, is not for sale. How do we know that? This is an example from the city's website called Geo St. Louis. That's GEO St. Louis. You can look for it on Google. And you see here 5980 Astra is at the lower right, about 4 o'clock in that picture. And it has a garage behind it. And then there's the private alley with a little pointer looking at it. We can also look at the legal description. So the legal description that will be on the city's website and will be in the legal newspaper, we'll get to that in a minute, is going to say 15 feet. Well, a typical residential lot in the city of St. Louis is not 15 feet, it's more like 25. So we know we have a problem when we look at that. The legal description for the house, by the way, is 40 feet in the front, 26 feet in the back. Now we're talking about a residential lot, and we're talking about you becoming an educated consumer and an educated bidder at the sheriff's auction. This is a paper plat available on the city's website that again shows at 10 o'clock here the lot with the house on it, 40 by 25 and so on, and then behind it with the little arrow, the private alley going out to Park Lane in the North Point neighborhood. City tax sales are conducted at the behest of the Collector of Revenue, Gregory F.X. Daly, who's photographed here. He also sells license plates and collects earnings taxes and water bills and personal property tax and lots of other things. But when it comes to real estate taxes, the Collector of Revenue in the city is the person who is charged with doing that, as are many other collectors across the state. The city of St. Louis Sheriff is Vernon Betts, and he is the person who, through his deputies, conducts this auction at the courthouse in response to delinquent taxes and lawsuits filed by the collector. How do these gentlemen advertise the properties that they are about to sell? They do so in a legal newspaper that very few people read called the Daily Record. They also put them up on the sheriff's website, but not until 2 weeks before the auction. I also have a mailing list. If you're not on my mailing list, I will include my email at the end of this video, and you can send me a little email or go on my website, MissouriTaxSales.com or DaleSweet.com, and you can sign up for my email list. Chevette Wayne Jones is a wonderful person who is a neighborhood manager with St. Louis Development Corporation downtown. She works for the city. She also has a mailing list that's wonderful and includes more fish fries and Juneteenth affairs and trivia nights than my emails do. So sign up for Chevette's mailing list also. Always be careful with the street addresses as we discussed on Astra Avenue, and be careful with the starting bid amount, but not so much anymore, and we're going to get to that. This is an example of the newspaper ad in the Daily Record, which does include a brief legal description of the property that may help you to determine whether the property is a billboard, a parking space, a condo unit, a private alley, or something else. This is an example of a geocoded map that I send out and I put up on my website for each auction in the St. Louis area. And that means the 5 auctions in the city and also property that is being sold by St. Louis County. I do not currently do separate maps for Warren, Franklin, Callaway, Jefferson, St. Charles, and other nearby Missouri counties, although I do work in those areas. At the city land tax auction, the deputies will not call a street address or an assessor's parcel number or a collector's account number when they sell a property. Instead, they will simply use the shorthand of a serial number. For instance, this first auction in 2023, beginning on May 16th, is sale 216. So most of the properties, but not all, will begin with a 216 and then some other number. It is imperative, if you were going to bid on this auction, that you go ahead and register for a bidder number right away, or at least 10 days before the May 16th auction. And then it is imperative that you show up early, listen for that number, and then that is how you will know that you're buying the property. No one is, or bidding on the property. No one downtown at the sheriff's auction is going to say 5980 Astra or 5980R Astra. Instead, they're going to say 216006, blah, blah, blah. Now, there used to be this sort of twilight zone numbers of serial numbers, and they would sometimes have 9 digits, and they would sometimes have only 6 digits, but the opening 3 digits would not be the same as the whatever. That should not be a problem this year, but we're going to talk more about that here in a minute. How do you investigate? Most people these days start with Google Street View, understanding that there are some neighborhoods in the city of St. Louis where the Google Street View van has not gone down the street since 2011 or 2012. So never, ever, ever bid at one of these auctions based on the fact that a building appears on Google without going there. There is no right to inspection or viewing the interior of a property, although it is reasonable to talk to neighbors or talk to people. It's absolutely necessary to check the legal description carefully, check the land records, call your attorney, try to figure out if the taxes have been paid during the time that the list was out for public discovery and the auction. How do you do that? You look on a newspaper ad posted in a glass box outside the 11th Street doors of the civil courts downtown. It is not marked online. Is it important to get a title report or to call the building division? Those are case-by-case determinations based on the property that you might be interested in. And if you're paying attention, you know I skipped sewer bills because I'm going to talk about that more here in a minute. This is an example of a newspaper ad blown up. You see here that this particular property at 3424 Michigan, which was scheduled to be sold 3 years ago, is 25 feet by 125 feet. Now, I'm not a land surveyor. and I don't have the proper equipment or licensure to stake your property, but I know what 25 feet is and I know what 125 feet is. You also see there in this particular example that 3 years ago, this opening bid amount was going to be $1,846, and that the property was being sold on an earlier judgment because payments in the amount of $100.29 were made since that opening bid, since that earlier sale was scheduled, and that was enough to save the property from being sold, but obviously somebody hasn't been keeping up with their payments. The general timeline, which is sort of out the window now, is that 3 years of taxes would be unpaid. Then the collector would sue the property. The collector would take a judgment, wait till the following year, and cause the sheriff to sell the property. The collector has never needed to wait 3 years. They simply did that as a matter of policy as opposed to taking away people's property from them. Nevertheless, the law requires the collector to act earlier on vacant and dilapidated property. So we're going to see these timelines change a little bit, intending to get properties back to the private market longer before a disaster occurs. If you want to bid at the May tax sale or the June tax sale or the July tax sale, you need to register with the sheriff at least 10 days before the auction. It's free. You can do it online. You can do it in a couple of minutes. I did it on Sunday. It was painless. I do recommend, however, because this is a new process, that you print the form before clicking submit and then print the confirmation page. Just in case you get to this auction and somebody says, well, you don't have a bidder number, you can show that you did indeed register. In any event, you should get there early and expect a crowd. This will be outdoors on the east side, the 11th Street side of the Civil Courts building downtown at 10 North Tucker, which is also where the redemptions are posted. Again, redemption is payment of taxes to avoid the sale. When the deputy calls the property serial number of the property that you're interested in, you'll yell stop. If more than one person yells stop, the 2 or 3 or more bidders will go back and forth for a while in $100 increments. So you can't go up a penny or $10. You have to go up $100 based on the bid of your opponent across the lawn. And that money has to be paid in cash or a cashier's check or a money order by 2 o'clock on the same day of the auction. And the sheriff will charge some additional administrative fees. At last press, that amount was $72 that will need to be paid in a separate check. So that is the bidder of the successful bidder on a property at $2,000 on an opening bid of $1,000 would need to have one check to the sheriff for $2,000 and one check to the sheriff for $72. Or one check for $2,000 and $72 in cash, and so on. The office does not take credit cards for land tax sales. Once you bid at the auction and you are the successful bidder, you have to come back and pay for it, or you can be banned from bidding at this auction forevermore. Once you buy the property at the auction, however, it is not yours, and you remain a trespasser until a judge says so. Now, people call me all the time and they say the roof is collapsing, there is a jungle of weeds in the front yard, what should I do? Dale, you told me my court date was going to be in 4 weeks or 7 weeks or something like that. Can you secure a property? Can you board up a window or tarp the roof? Let's talk about it. Under the law, you're technically a trespasser until the judge says otherwise. Under the law as it is in the state of Missouri that affects the city's tax sales, you'll need to confirm the sale within 6 months, which probably means that you want to hire an experienced attorney who may not be me, may be one of our colleagues who also practices in this area. Your lawyer will order a title search to determine whether proper notice was given to appropriate lien holders and owners prior to the auction, and then we'll send notice will schedule a hearing in court, will engage an appraiser who will have to go out and appraise the property under forced sale conditions, will prepare an order for the judge to sign, and so on. Once the judge approves the sale, the property is yours except for liens of the federal government. Now, no matter how many times I tell people to buyer beware and make sure you're not buying an alley or a condo unit or a parking space or an unusual lot or whatever, or a billboard, people will do those things. And this is a buyer beware, all sales final auction. There is no return counter for this Christmas sweater that doesn't fit. However, in some certain circumstances, your attorney may be able to ask the court, the collector, and the sheriff to have the sale set aside or voided as if it didn't happen. And then people ask me all the time about occupants and how quickly they can evict them. And I don't know why somebody wants to evict somebody without talking to them. So for instance, after that judge approves the sale, I would recommend talking to occupants. They could be the most wonderful occupants in the world whose landlord has a gambling addiction or has passed away or otherwise didn't pay her or his taxes. There's a stupid legal requirement in the law that is almost unenforceable except for when it is. And the law says that the tax sale purchaser has to apply and only apply for an occupancy permit within 10 days of court confirmation. Now that's not 10 days of going to the auction, that's 10 days after the judge says that it really belongs to you. One of the reasons why this is stupid is you don't necessarily have to get that permit granted, you only have to apply for it. And an occupancy permit in the city of St. Louis is for a business. None of this requirement applies to a vacant lot. An occupancy permit applies to a business. An occupancy permit is for inspectors, building, electrical, plumbing, and mechanical. And a certificate of inspection is like an occupancy permit, but in the city of St. Louis, a certificate of inspection is what we get for residential dwellings, such as condos, apartments, and houses. And a certificate of inspection is now an appropriate application to make instead of an occupancy permit, if applicable, for a residence or an apartment building or a condo. It is not necessary to have inspectors out right away. It is acceptable to tell the building division at City Hall when applying that you will call back to schedule when you're good and ready. Now, none of this means that you should not obtain necessary permits for permitted work, such as replacing a furnace, doing interior alterations such as moving walls around, plumbing, or electrical work. However, the application is simply necessary within 10 days of the court confirmation, and theoretically, the permit itself is granted prior to transferring the property to another person, such as by selling it. The sheriff's deed is about as good as it gets, but you'll find in it a $5,000 deed restriction. The $5,000 is if you don't get a permit issued by the time that you sell the property. People get really scared about this, but it's clear in the law that the $5,000 is not a lien against the property, but is rather the right of the sheriff to be able to sue the individual purchaser if she doesn't get an occupancy permit prior to selling the property. Now, as a practical matter, this has been in the law since the 1980s and it's never been enforced. However, it is important to buy property at the sheriff's auction intending to fix it and intending to follow the law. The sheriff will record his deed to you among the land records of the St. Louis City Recorder of Deeds, Michael Butler. Once it's recorded at Michael Butler's office, it will make its way down the hallway to the city assessor, Michael Dauphin, who will update the owner's name on the website. It is at that point that the taxes that were included in the opening bid amount will appear as having been paid at the Collector of Revenue's office. Now, what kind of title do you have when you emerge from this auction? As good a title as you can, considering it's an involuntary sale. Title companies vary. It's important to shop around. We have at least 2 title companies here in the city of St. Louis, operating in the St. Louis area, that will insure on St. Louis City tax sales without a separate quiet title lawsuit. And there may be additional bills that apply, although we're going to get to that here in a minute. If I didn't say it already, folks, it's really important to know that the major thing about this auction is that you have to register in advance, and that the opening bid amount should be all sums due against the property, with possibly the exception of the sewer bill. The pitfalls that we need to watch out for, however, are the legal description, remember the alley earlier, and federal tax liens, some properties being billboards, having easements on them, being condo parking spaces, and so on. The Eclipse decision is something from September of 2021. It's a Superior Court decision determining a Jefferson County case up on appeal, and it says that sewer bills survive a tax sale. Nevertheless, the St. Louis City tax sale law, as enacted by the legislature or revised by the legislature in the previous session in 2022, specifically says that all liens are wiped out by the tax sale unless it is a federal tax lien. Nevertheless, the sewer district should put up a list of properties to be sold at the sheriff's auction on the sewer district's website with the amount due on each. The Show Me case is another case from 2021 or 2022, and we already knew this, but federal tax liens or federal criminal restitution liens and so on will continue because those are governed by federal law and not by state law based on the Supremacy Clause in the United States Constitution. What kind of title do you have if you buy property at sheriff's auction in the city of St. Louis? Just about the best you can without a voluntary sale. Subject to sewer bills, maybe, federal liens, maybe. Title companies are always risk averse because they only charge a premium one time, as opposed to car insurance or health insurance or fire insurance or other kinds of insurance. And so it's important to seek proper legal counsel from an attorney of your choice in order to find out what the quality of title is that you would receive from a sheriff's auction and whether or not you'll be able to easily sell the property to a subsequent purchaser or to borrow against your property. The trouble is the title companies are risk averse. They want more process than is due. Even though the judge says everything's fine, a title company can say no way, no how. And that's because they use national underwriters who are not familiar with the specific laws and practices here in the city of St. Louis, which is another reason why notice will be even stronger and better documented in the current year and future years. What does this cost? I don't want to belabor this, but a package price for a title report, an appraisal report, the appraiser posting the property with notice, and my services will cost about $750 if the matter is uncontested, with additional charges applying to the trial of the century or hotly contested matters or additional services that may pop up. Again, that is not a legal fee of $750. That is the cost of a title report. That is the cost of an appraisal report. That is the cost of the appraiser posting the property. That is the cost of the appraiser's testimony in court and your lawyer's fee. Other firms may be able to do this for less expense or greater expense. That's what our package price is for 2023 only. Again, folks, I'm an attorney. I'm probably not your attorney. Tonight we didn't do legal advice related to anybody's particular situation, and the choice of a lawyer is always an important decision that should not be based solely on advertisements. In order to get on my email list, please send me a little email, dale@missouritaxsales.com, or go on my website, www.missouritaxsales.com or dalesuite.com, or call me here at the office, telephone 636-TAX-SALE, and we'll get you signed up. Again, folks, it is critically important, if you don't want to get turned away from a St. Louis City tax sale auction conducted by the sheriff, to register on the sheriff's webpage at least 10 days in advance. It's been a pleasure being with you here tonight. Good night and good luck.